Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent.
Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa.
We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south.
Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Ukraine says its air defense has intercepted 57 out of 104 drones launched by Russia, which hit key infrastructure in several regions of the country, damaging several buildings. Iran deploys missiles featuring artificial intelligence technology during military drills in the Gulf. This comes days after the inauguration of US President Donald Trump, who is known for a maximum pressure approach toward Tehran. A Pakistani court sentences 4 men to death for posting blasphemous content online. A human rights support group in the country says it will challenge the conviction. Thousands protest against the government in the Serbian capital Belgrade over the fatal collapse of a train station roof in November last year. Demonstrators demand accountability from officials and blame corruption and nepotism for the roof collapse. And the global police body Interpol says at least 37 suspected terrorists, including members of Islamic State, have been arrested across East Africa over the last 2 months. The arrests come as concerns mount over a possible ISIS resurgence in Tanzania, Mozambique, Uganda, and Somalia. Hello and welcome. Is the world heading toward another war? Africa's 2 mineral-rich neighbours, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, are locked in a fierce conflict that has now blown into a full-fledged battle. Rwanda-backed M23 rebels, who have waged an insurgency in the Democratic Republic of Congo's east for years, have claimed to capture the largest city in the region and the capital of North Kivu province, Goma. The rebels announced the city's takeover just minutes before the expiration of a 48-hour deadline. That was imposed by the group for the Congolese army to disarm and surrender. The DRC calls it a declaration of war by Rwanda and has cut all diplomatic ties with its neighbouring nation, while Kigali accuses Kinshasa of blocking peace attempts.
At this very moment, as I stand before you, an attack of unprecedented gravity is unfolding before the eyes of the world. New Rwandan troops have crossed the 12th and 13th border posts between Goma and Gisenyi, entering our territory in broad daylight in an open and deliberate violation of our national sovereignty. This is outright aggression, a declaration of war that no longer hides behind diplomatic tricks.
Rwanda regrets the deteriorating security situation in the eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The current crisis could have been averted had the DRC government demonstrated a genuine commitment to peace.
The M23 rebels had been advancing in DRC's mineral-rich east for days. They had taken over key cities before marching toward Goma. The area has been a hotspot of the years-long conflict in the DRC, and it is also a hub of various key minerals like gold and other rare earth minerals. But the situation worsened over the weekend. As the rebels were marching toward the provincial capital of Goma, they engaged in clashes with the peacekeeping troops deployed in the region. At least 3 UN peacekeepers, 2 South Africans and a Uruguayan, and 7 more South African soldiers and 3 from Malawi serving in a separate Southern Africa mission were killed in the violence. Meanwhile, the military governor of North Kivu was also killed. President Felix Tshisekedi called for urgent meetings after the deadly clashes. Meanwhile, the international pressure has been building on the Rwandan government led by President Paul Kagame. Countries like the US, the UK and France have called for Rwanda to withdraw its support to the M23 rebels. The UN Security Council has called the rebels' advance a flagrant disregard for the DRC's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It has demanded the withdrawal of the external forces without naming Rwanda. The UN accuses Rwanda of deploying up to 4,000 troops in Congo. However, Kigali has refused to obey the order. It says its forces will stay to maintain a sustained defensive posture. As per reports, the Rwandan drone strikes have hit targets near Goma even after the calls. Shooting and gunfire have also been reported in the area. Now, the years-long conflict in the DRC is on 2 bases. One is ethnic. The M23 rebels is a group of ethnic Tutsi-led insurgents who have taken up arms against Congolese forces. The group has accused the government of DRC of not living up to a peace deal and fully integrating Congolese Tutsis into the army and administration. It also vows to defend Tutsi interests, particularly against ethnic Hutu militias, such as the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, or the FDLR, which was founded by the Hutus who fled Rwanda after participating in the 1994 genocide of more than 800,000 Tutsis. After years of inactiveness, the M23 group relaunched fighting in 2022. Rwanda accuses the DRC of working with some of those responsible for the 1994 Rwandan genocide against the ethnic Tutsis. President Kagame is also born to a Tutsi family. However, Rwanda's critics accuse it of using the M23 to loot the DRC's minerals, such as gold, cobalt and tantalum. This makes the fight for minerals another basis of fighting. Now, the conflict has displaced over 2 million people in the DRC. Many of them had found refuge in Goma, but they are now being forced to leave the city again. Several families are leaving the area on small, crowded boats with bundled up belongings, while hospitals are overcrowded as casualties from the fighting grow. As panic struck the Goma residents, many say they are ready to stay where they are amid the death and chaos.
Sitting here, I can hear the sound of bombs, the crackle of falling bullets. We decided to stay at home because as long as there are wars, those who flee the war can also die or live a bad life. That's why we thought it was better to stay at home than to die fleeing the war. If we're going to die, it's better to die here.
The efforts of brokering peace in an Angola-led mediation failed last month as talks were suspended. However, as rebels were marching toward Goma, Rwandan President Paul Kagame traveled to Turkey and met with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan last week. Erdogan had pitched to resolve the DRC-Rwanda conflict after successfully mediating between neighbours Ethiopia and Somalia. Now, Kenyan President William Ruto, who is the chair of the East Africa Community Bloc, has announced an urgent summit within 48 hours to address the crisis. Will Africa be able to avoid another war? From the tensions between the DRC and Rwanda, let us now turn our attention to the North African country of Sudan that has been grappling with a deadly civil war for nearly 2 years. Sudan's army chief, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, visited the army headquarters in the capital city of Khartoum, which was recaptured after being under siege since the civil war erupted in April of 2023. Accompanied by senior military leaders, Burhan praised the resilience and sacrifices of soldiers who defended the army's general command for 20 months and vowed to eradicate the paramilitary rapid support forces led by Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo.
You have all held out for the past 20 months and have been a model for the Sudanese armed forces. Whenever we meet people on the streets, they all say that they're proud of having a strong army. The Sudanese people stand behind the army, and we are all witnessing now how the entire people is supporting us in this battle. This battle is nearing its end, and these rebels, rapid support forces, shall cease to exist. We pledge to the Sudanese people that we'll keep fighting until we achieve this.
Burhan's visit to the headquarters came 2 days after the forces had recaptured the general command of the armed forces, which the RSF had encircled since a power struggle led to a war between the army and the paramilitary rebels in 2023. The recapturing of the complex is the biggest victory for the army yet, particularly in the capital region, since the reclamation of Khartoum's twin sister Omdurman nearly a year ago. Reports suggest that the army had merged troops stationed in Khartoum and Omdurman with the forces at the headquarters to break the siege last week, which had forced the military to supply its troops inside the headquarters with airdrops. Army Chief Burhan was himself allegedly also trapped inside the complex for 4 months before emerging in August of 2023 and fleeing to the coastal city of Port Sudan. Now, Burhan's visit to the headquarters have coincided with the increasing clashes between the army and the RSF in recent days across the country, including in cities such as Omdurman, Bari, and Al Fasher. On Sunday, the United Nations said around 70 people were killed in an attack by the RSF on the only functional hospital in the besieged city of Al Fasher in Sudan's western Darfur region. However, the RSF accused the army and its allies of striking the hospital. The attack on the Saudi teaching maternal hospital came as the group was experiencing apparent battlefield losses to the Sudanese military and allied forces. Earlier this month, Sudanese troops had regained control of Wad Madani in the Al Jazara state just south of Khartoum. Now securing a strategic crossroad between the capital and the surrounding states. Still, Sudan's western Darfur region and large parts of the south are under the RSF's control, while the army controls only the north and east of the country. Greater Khartoum is carved up between them. But as the army makes significant gains and weakens the RSF's control in Sudan, it is yet to be seen whether the two warring leaders will sit at the negotiating table and discuss an end to the war, which has unleashed a humanitarian disaster of epic proportions. Shifting our focus, as the West loses its shine and influence in Africa, Russia has significantly made inroads into the continent. It has been supporting Africa's developmental and security needs. In the latest, Russian President Vladimir Putin held talks with his counterpart from Guinea-Bissau, a country located on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean in West Africa. In a phone conversation with the Guinea-Bissau's President Umaro Embalo, Putin reportedly discussed expanding trade and investment between the two countries, as well as boosting humanitarian aid to Guinea-Bissau. In a post on social media platform X, Guinea-Bissau's Embalo said that he had a long telephone conversation with Putin that was primarily focused on the international geopolitical situation and on ways to strengthen the bilateral ties between the two countries. Now, Moscow and Guinea-Bissau have maintained diplomatic ties since 1974, when the former Soviet Union aided the West African country in gaining independence from the colonizer Portugal. Since then, the two countries have been close to each other. Both countries also signed a military agreement with each other in November of 2018. Last year, Guinea-Bissau's president visited Moscow during Russia's annual Victory Day parade in May. The West African country's president urged Putin to allow soldiers from his country to receive training in Russia during their meeting. Putin had announced plans to expand his government's scholarship program for more students from Guinea-Bissau to study in Russia. In turn, Guinea-Bissau assured Putin that the country would remain a reliable partner in Africa. Now, the latest exchange between Putin and Guinea-Bissau's Mbalo comes as Russia seeks to expand its influence in Africa amid growing anti-West sentiment. It has been leveraging economic, energy, agriculture, and military ties and investments in order to be seen as a serious counterweight to the US and its allies' presence in the continent. Last week, the Russian president spoke by phone with his Egyptian counterpart, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and discussed the establishment of the Russian industrial zone in the Suez Canal economic zone, as well as the construction of the Al-Dabba nuclear power plant. Now, earlier this month, Putin also hosted the Central African Republic's president in Moscow and discussed ways to deepen the two countries' ties. In a bid to boost its diplomatic presence on the continent, the country is also set to open 3 new embassies in Africa this year. This is in Niger, Sierra Leone, and South Sudan. Reports suggest that currently Russia operates only 43 diplomatic and consular missions in the continent. This is in countries such as Algeria, Angola, Cameroon, the DRC, Djibouti, Egypt, Gabon, Kenya, Guinea-Bissau, Morocco, Nigeria, South Africa, and Libya, among others. Moreover, Russia has also been supporting several African governments by providing them with mercenaries and arms to fight terrorists, and they have also provided military trainers and instructors to advise on operations. Economic ties have also deepened between Russia and Africa, with trade surging to a record $24.5 billion in the year 2024. So as Africa dumps the West and turns to Russia for its needs, will Moscow be able to fulfill Africa's dreams amid the intensifying war in Ukraine? And for our last story, we are shifting focus to South Africa, where troubles are growing for President Cyril Ramaphosa. His own coalition partners have declared a dispute with the government after the president signed some controversial bills into law. Ramaphosa has approved the controversial expropriation bill. It is a land reform bill that is strongly opposed by the Democratic Alliance, or the DA, the second largest party in Ramaphosa's government of national unity. Now, the law allows the government to seize land without having to pay compensation. It replaces the Pre-Democratic Expropriation Act of 1975 and outlines how expropriation can be done and on what basis by the state. It can benefit the country's majority black citizens who own just a small fraction of farmland, more than 30 years after the end of apartheid. Most landowners are a part of the white minority, and those advocating for the white minority rights, like the DA, a pro-business opposition party, are opposing the bill. The party has in fact declared a dispute and has called for an overhaul of relations within the Government of National Unity. It has criticized Ramaphosa's African National Congress Party, or the ANC, for failing to adhere to the procedures set out in a coalition deal agreed last year. The party has also slammed Ramaphosa's approval of the National Health Insurance Act, which it says will ban the private sector from offering cover for treatment available under the law. The DA has also rejected parts of an education bill that Ramaphosa assented to in September, complaining that it gives the government excessive powers to determine language policy and admission criteria in state-run schools. Meanwhile, another conservative party in Ramaphosa's coalition, the Freedom Front Plus party, has vowed to challenge the land seizure law. The party says it will do everything in its power to have it amended if it is found to be unconstitutional. Both of these parties joined Ramaphosa's ANC to form a government of unity last year. This after the ANC lost its parliamentary majority for the first time in 30 years and was forced to join hands with rival parties. However, observers raise skepticism over the functioning of the government over their ideological differences. Apart from domestic concerns, the differences are also visible in foreign policy stance. The DA is a staunch supporter of the West and condemns ties with Russia, while Ramaphosa in recent years has forged deeper relations with Moscow. Will Ramaphosa be able to carry on with his agenda or face a mutiny within his own coalition government? And with that, it's a wrap on the show. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.